All right, hello and good morning, everybody. We're here for my research methods class that is online. It is week number 10, and I know we're on a different day and time, so I'm so sorry about that. I got a phone call from my daughter's school yesterday and had to take off very quickly. So everything was fine, but she was coughing, and so they wanted me to come get her. So sorry about that. Sorry for the adjustment, and it was very last minute. So again, I apologize, but thankfully we have our chance this morning to still do our live stream. Can you all hear me and see me okay? Everything looks all right on my end, but just to make sure before I keep going that you can hear me and see me just fine. Wait just a minute to check. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. That's wonderful. A couple of things like usual. I want to go over some feedback from last week with the discussion, and then we'll talk about the things that are due this week, including homework assignment number 3. So we'll go over that a little bit as well. I'll of course give you the Twitch extra credit question and some reminders and see if you have any questions at all for me. And it's Friday, so it's almost the weekend. And even better, if you've been feeling tired and burnt out, spring break is coming so fast. We just have next week to get through, and then we are officially to spring break. I'm very excited. A week from tomorrow, I get to go on my cruise with my family, so that should be very exciting for spring break. Definitely looking forward to gaining a good 10 pounds in the 7 days that I will be on that cruise ship. That's my plan. But I hope lots of you have plans for spring break, at the very least to just relax, but hopefully, maybe something fun on the horizon that definitely makes it easier to look forward to. But let's go ahead and go over to Canvas together. And again, we are in week number 10. Way down here, there's only 17 weeks in the semester, so we are definitely making some serious headway. We should go back to last week really quickly. Sorry about that. I wanted to go back to last week and talk about discussion number 9 and self-assessment number 2. Discussion number 9. You were in charge of making up an experiment and then kind of identifying the different components of it. Really interesting. A lot of you came up with some very fun topics. There was a lot related to exercise, and there was a lot related to mood and phone use before going to bed or sleep. I wrote those down as like the most common things that people seem to be interested in. A lot of really fun and interesting ideas and topics. Oh, why do I keep yawning? Sorry about that. But I really thought you did a beautiful job of identifying the independent and dependent variable. Probably the biggest thing that I saw that people struggled with here was continuing to identify the levels and then how we are going to actually like study or measure those things. So when we talk about the independent variable, if there are multiple conditions present within that independent variable, so let's say you're trying to study the effect of phone use on sleep, right? Then your independent variable would be phone use. And maybe the conditions you have is somebody is not allowed to use their phone, somebody else can use their phone for an hour, and somebody else can use their phone for 2 hours, right? So the levels or the conditions are just the different things that somebody might be exposed to. And then the dependent variable in that example would be sleep. And we'd be measuring that by the number of hours that somebody reports sleeping at night. So I would say that's the one thing that I continue to see people struggle with just a little bit. I think the idea of levels is confusing. Just think about the different like conditions or different things that somebody might be exposed to. And maybe that would be helpful. Really nice job. Well done. Wow, I can't talk. Nicely done. Well done job on talking about how you would select your participants. A lot of you did a great job of talking about random sampling, correctly identifying what kind of group. A little bit more, I would have liked a little bit more on number 7 for several of you, talking about how you would ensure internal validity. So thinking about how you could set things up properly to ensure that you're actually measuring what you wanted to measure, that your experiment is sound, and good, but for the most part, really, really nicely done. Most of you did a beautiful job of talking about these different elements. I was really impressed and happy to see that so many of you were, understanding and putting these things together. The other thing for last week, thank you so much for all your honesty on the self-assessment number 2. Most of you did a great job of kind of reflecting on how you felt you did on the exam and areas that you could do better on. I love a couple of you were like, I could do better with studying. I didn't do as well as I would like. A few of you talked about things you were confused about, and I appreciate that feedback. So thank you. Overall, again, really, really nicely done on the materials for last week. I feel like so many of you are just doing a beautiful job, and it makes me happy to see that so many of you are performing so well. So again, continue to respond to a classmate, continue to give me lots of detail in your responses. This week we move on to week number 10 and chapter 11. We also have a homework assignment due this week, one of the 4 homework assignments that we have. So I'll talk about each one of those components a little bit, just making sure that there were no questions in the chat, but nothing so far. If you think of any questions at any point, of course, feel free to put it in there. So this week, make sure that you read chapter 11, pages 311 to 332 in the textbook. So it's not the entire chapter, so you don't need to read all of it, just those pages 311 to 332. And then once you've done that, you'll want to go through the lecture that I made for you. So here we're looking at more on experiments. Confounding and obscuring variables is the topic for this week. So some learning objectives on your chapter summary. We're looking at some of the threats to internal validity, a little bit more about confounds and selection effects and order effects, things that we talked about a little bit in chapter 10, but we're going to build on that a little bit more. And we do that a lot over this class, kind of introducing something and then building on it later. So you're going to look at the threats to internal validity, the 3 major threats to internal validity in experiments, and then how do you view zero effects? So when something happens where we have zero effect being noticed, what could that mean? What are the different interpretations of that? A little bit more beyond the book. I had a chance to bring in football, and I was so excited to bring in football, right? Interesting idea here about regression, regression threat. There was definitely something called touchdown regression. Julio Jones was famous for this, though we'll see where he ends up now. But Julio Jones was famous for this he didn't score like a single touchdown one season. And so they kept saying like the regression is coming, right? So I got a chance to talk about that a little bit as well. This is a really, really helpful table that I put on here. Oh, excuse me. This is a really helpful table that I put in here. I copied it from the book and scanned it and put it in here so that you would have it. I think it's a really wonderful summary of these different internal validity threats. Also giving you an example and some questions to ask. I thought it was fantastic, so I put that in here as a reference point for you. And then some key terms in review. Here are all the key terms that you need to know from chapter 11 for the next exam. So obviously make sure that you read through that, click on any links that are in there or any videos, always watch them. But read through all of that, read through the chapter in the book. Once you have done with that, you will go back and you obviously want to also watch the lecture video that I made where I lecture with the PowerPoint slides. So this is me lecturing to that section of chapter 11. Definitely pay attention. You might want to consider taking notes as this will obviously be something that appears on the next exam. So hopefully this will be really helpful for you in understanding. I go over the really bad experiment and some different threats to internal validity, and again highlighting the topics from chapter 11. So make sure that you watch that, make sure that you go through the lecture, read everything, click on everything. When you're done with both of those, you'll go to discussion number 10. And with discussion number 10, sorry, my Twitch chat just disappeared. Let me bring that back up. There we go. For discussion number 10, you're building on this idea, right? So you're going to read this little experiment that I have below. It's very brief. And then answer the questions that follow, which are related to the content in chapter 11, related to threats on internal validity, and also building on the information from chapter 10 on simple experiments. So you're kind of bringing those two together. So here's your little example. Professor Beach wanted to demonstrate to his cognitive psychology class how using retrieval cues can improve memory. First, he read a list of 16 words in random order to his class. Immediately afterward, he had his students write down all of the words they could remember. On average, they recalled about 7 words. Then he told them that the words could be sorted into 4 categories: automobiles, cutting instruments, sports, and fruits. Professor Beach encouraged his students to do this in their minds while listening to the list again, after which they would be given another chance to recall the words. On the second test of recall, students remembered on average 14 words. From these findings, Professor Beach concluded that retrieval cues serve as an effective mnemonic strategy. So using that little example, that short example, you're going to answer the 5 questions that are right here related to this chapter. Number 1. What is the independent variable and the levels of the independent variable? So what is the independent variable and its levels? And then what is the dependent variable and how is it being measured? Number 2, did Professor Beach use a between subjects or within subjects design? And explain. Number 3, which of the following best describes the design used in this study? Post-test only, pre-test, post-test, repeated measures, or concurrent measures? And explain. Number 4, identify and explain one possible threat to the internal validity of the experiment, and also explain how it could possibly be addressed or avoided. And this is something from specifically from chapter 11. And number 5, discuss the external validity of the experiment. Can Professor Beach's results be generalized? Why or why not? And I really look forward to reading your responses to this. It's a great chance to practice and apply that information. So make sure that you answer everything fully. When you're ready to do that, you can hit reply right here, and then you'll also, of course, reply to a classmate. So let's say I really like the thoughts that Grace had shared. I could hit reply to Grace or Justine, and that will give you a chance to get those 2 points of credit. So 13 points for your responses to me and 2 for your responses to a classmate. So make sure that you're doing all of that like usual. The one other thing that you do have this week, other than the extra credit like usual, is you do have homework assignment number 3. And so remember, these are worth 25 points. They're worth a little bit more than a discussion. So you definitely want to make sure you're spending time here. This is going to be a wonderful opportunity to, again, bring all of this information together. The discussion and the homework assignment have a lot of parallels to them. So if you are doing well on one, it should really help on the other. But for this homework assignment, you're going to read this article that I have right here. And then the instructions are under this. So the article is right here. If you click on this, it'll open that up for you. So physical order produces healthy choices, generosity, and conventionality, whereas disorder produces creativity. And so here you can see the PDF article that is right here. Has a couple of pictures in it showing you orderly and disorderly, right? There's a couple of different things in here. So you're going to be reading through this, experiment 1 and experiment 2. And then you're going to be answering some questions about it. So make sure that you read through this whole thing. It's not super long at all, but it's a very interesting study, a real one that was published in APS journal not that long ago, back in 2013, so a few years back. But make sure that you read through that. And then once you've read through that, you will go and you'll click on homework assignment number 3. Now this is where you can find where you're going to be submitting this. So up here you click start assignment and you can upload your responses. Remember that it can only be in these formats. So doc, docx, PDF, and RTF. I wrote and RTF. Apparently I was really looking for RTF. But you're going to be uploading it here. This is due by this Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. So make sure that you are getting going on this if you haven't already. Several of you have already turned it in, but make sure that you're working on it. So like always, the point of this third assignment is for you to practice with applying the information that you've learned so far, analyzing an APA-style journal article. This should be roughly 2 to 3 pages of standard margins, double-spaced, standard Times New Roman fonts. Make sure that you number and label each response so I know which question that you're answering. Make sure it's really obvious to me which ones you're answering. Don't make me have to search for it. Make it obvious, right? So the content and specifics, you're going to read the article that I just showed you back on the previous page. And then you're going to answer the questions below. And there are several questions about both experiments, experiment 1 and 2. And you're going to answer these using the knowledge that you've gained from your reading in the book this week and also in the weeks previously. So what you will do again is type all this out, and once you have that done, you'll upload it by clicking Start Assignment. But let's look at the questions. So for each experiment, you're answering the same questions. So you're looking at each one individually. So for experiment number 1, you're going to identify the independent variable and its levels. Number 2, identify the dependent variable and how it's being measured. How is it being operationalized? Number 3, does this study utilize a between or within subjects design? And explain. Number 4, I want you to think about construct validity. And when you're thinking about construct validity, respond to the following. What construct are the researchers attempting to manipulate? How do the researchers operationalize this construct? Is the definition of the manipulated variable reasonable? What constructs are they attempting to measure? How do they operationalize that? Is it reasonable? And explain. So when you're thinking about construct validity, I've given you a couple of things to kind of guide you. Number 5, you will think about internal validity and respond to the following. Again, a few ideas to kind of guide you with thinking about that. Did the researcher implement control variables? If so, list at least 2 of them. Was there a confound? If so, explain. How did the researchers handle variables they could not control, such as participant characteristics? Are there any other relevant threats to internal validity? After considering your response, rate the internal validity of the study. Would you put it as high or low, and explain? And then finally, number 6, thinking about external validity, respond to the following. What was the sample in the study? Was it randomly selected? Is there a potential bias? And do you think the results of this study are generalizable? So you'll answer all 6 of those questions for experiment number 1. And again, make sure that you're really labeling each one of them. You don't want me to have to wonder which one you're answering. So make sure to label them, make sure it's very clear and obvious. And then for experiment number 2, you're going to do the exact same thing. So the exact same questions as experiment 1, but experiment 2 in the article is a little bit different. So you're going to be thinking about this one separately, identifying all of those components, right? Thinking about construct, internal and external validity, and answering all of those again for the other experiment. So all of this together should add up to a good 2 to 3 pages. It is due by the 20th. This Sunday at 11:59 p.m. And again, you're uploading that document right here. Are there any questions at all about the homework assignment? Anything you're confused about or that I can answer for you with the homework? I'll give you just a minute just to see and make sure you are caught up to me here. Right. I'm just going to hold on just a minute just to make sure. All right. And if you think of anything, obviously feel free to put that in the chat. Otherwise, hopefully it means that you're feeling pretty good about it. I tried to go through it in a decent amount of detail for you. But make sure you get going on this. Again, this is due by Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. The other thing that you have for this week, as always, is the optional Twitch extra credit, which I will give you in just a moment. But I have a couple of quick reminders for you, as usual. So the first one, as always, please take a moment to double check your subscription status. Again, so many of you have fallen off. Thank you for those of you who keep on top of this. But just looking at the chat, for example, Jacob, yours has fallen off. Alexis, yours has well. And then the rest of you who posted so far in the chat are good. But if you could just take a quick moment to just resubscribe for free if you need to. Again, it's only good for 30 days. That saves me some time, so I really greatly appreciate those of you who've been doing that. The other thing that I want to point out, I'm going to keep this day and time for our live stream next week. And again, I'm sorry for, for kind of changing things up a little bit. But I have a huge meeting next Thursday for like a prep internship program. And so rather than make things super tight, I'm going to make sure we have plenty of time for next week. And so our next Twitch live stream will be on Friday, 3:25 at 8 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so our next Twitch live stream will be on Friday, 3:25 at 8 in the morning. And I will definitely remind you of that as we get closer, and I will put that in the announcements on Canvas as well, so that hopefully you remember. And I'll change the calendar on Canvas to reflect that as well. So for at least one more week, we will continue this day and time next Friday at 8 a.m. And then the following Friday, the following week is spring break, so we get a little bit of a break, and then we will return after that. So last thing, let me give you the Twitch extra credit question so that you can get the points for joining me today. So I'm going to copy and paste that into the chat as well. So the extra credit question for this week, what are the 3 main threats to internal validity that we reviewed and previously discussed? So these were discussed previously and also reviewed in this week's materials. So what are the 3 main threats to internal validity? And then when you're ready for that, you'll go onto Canvas. And since we're in week 10, you'll click on optional Twitch extra credit number 10. And then up at the top, click start assignment like usual. And you can type your response here in the box. Man, I am not typing well or anything today. And then hit submit. And you get your little confetti burst and spaceships, confetti and spaceships today. But this is all due by Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. So make sure that you get going on the stuff for this week. Again, if it were me, I would read the chapter in the textbook first. And remember, you're not responsible for all of it, just pages 311 to 332. Complete the lecture and the lecture video. Take notes, pay attention. Complete discussion number 10, homework assignment number 3, and then don't forget about the optional Twitch extra credit question if you are interested. So I think that is everything that I wanted to share with you. Are there any questions or comments or anything? Anything at all that I can help to answer before we call it a day? I'll hang out obviously for a little bit here. If you do think of any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I would be happy to answer them for you. Otherwise, I hope you all have a wonderful and fantastic week. It's almost the weekend. It is coming very, very soon. So hang in there if you're feeling a little tired or burnt out. But have a wonderful week, a wonderful weekend, and I will hope to see a bunch of you next Friday morning at 8 a.m. For our week number 11 live stream before we head to spring break. So I'm going to minimize my video, but I will hang out for a little while if you think of any questions at all. Otherwise, you're welcome to take off, and I will hopefully see you all next week. All right, everyone, it looks like just about everybody is gone, so I'm going to go ahead and close this up. But if you think of any questions or anything, feel free to email me. Otherwise, again, have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.